Hi, everyone. So I think we're live now, right? Okay, so my name is Iona. I'm very pleased to be here today with you, with Iona.
Hi, my name is Iona. I'm working for a German NGO, and I'm from Austria.
And I work for the PIPD, an NGO in Palestine. So today we're going to talk very briefly about the Communicating Palestine Project. And I wanted to start to share with you, I think, my personal experience as a Palestinian and French, Palestinian growing up in the diaspora in France. And I think, this project is so important for me because when I was in school, I think I was experiencing, like many of us, what I would call benevolent racism. So people would either be when they would discover that I'm Palestinian, be like really excited and ask me, so thinking that we are all resistance or fida'in and kind of really fascinated. Or on the contrary, make these really bad jokes about like, so are you a terrorist? And the problem is that it didn't stop at school because I went on and worked at the United Nations then. And realized that even there, people are international, they're supposed to be very open-minded, but then I would still get the jokes like, what an explosive ambience, and things like that. And I also realized that we don't own our own narrative. So that's the second part of the problem when communicating about Palestine, is that we Palestinians are not deemed the best people to talk about what's going on there. We're deemed too emotional or biased. You're Austrian, I guess, when someone has to ask something about Austria and want an expertise on Austria, they might turn to an Austrian. But actually for Palestinians, it's often better if it's an American, an Israeli, and we're not necessarily welcome around the table. And so, part of the objective is obviously to reclaim our narrative. And that's also what this forum, I think, is about. So I think this whole idea is what is behind this project. And Iona, maybe you want to tell us a bit more.
Yes, but first I will also share a little bit about my personal experience as an international coming into this context. I was actually only 17 years old when I came to Palestine for the first time. So I had this privilege of seeing Palestine first and foremost with my own eyes before I got to see any of the news coverage about it. And when I returned after this first trip, the Gaza war in 2011 started, and I saw the news coverage about Palestinians, and it was so different than the Palestine that I actually experienced. And this was really what gave me the motivation to work on closing this gap, or narrowing it at least, between how Palestinians are represented in the media and how I experience living in Palestine. And I think that a lot of my international colleagues that live here actually share this frustration with me. I mean, we are working among Palestinians, we are living here, and we have a much more nuanced understanding of the Palestinian context than maybe our head offices or international news outlets have. So this gives us a huge opportunity and the potential to tell stories about Palestine that are different. And we are not using this potential to our fullest extent. And I think that's mainly because we don't have the strategic approach on how to communicate about Palestine. So what I see a lot of times is that we fall back into the stereotypes and into the narratives that we see in the media and in the development brochures. So organizations I would work with would always fall back to using these pictures of small children that are kind of passive and degrading, simply because they don't have a strategy on what else to use, even if they are not working with these communities, and if they are applying principles of do no harm and bottom-up approaches and eye-level partnerships to their work, they are not applying these principles to their communication. And this is exactly what we want to approach with the project of Communicating Palestine, and to reverse these dynamics where internationals are oftentimes telling Palestinians how to communicate to international audiences, how to carry themselves, what to say and what not to say. We want to switch that around and ask Palestinians how they themselves want to be represented, and to listen to their opinions on how we can communicate Palestine.
Yeah, and you said a very important word, I think, is nuance. Part of the problem, and I realize it's not exclusive to Palestinians, is these very simplified narratives, right? You're either a fighter, or you're a poor child or children. And this is also something that I discovered when living in Kenya, right, around Africa. And I think Africans don't really own their narrative. So I think it's how can we reclaim our narrative? And this project is really one of the most participatory projects I think that I've had the chance to be in. So, we are steering it with 9 civil society organizations, Palestinians and international. And we conduct really a participatory research. We've done a survey that was responded by 500 Palestinians around the world. We did focus groups here with both journalists, Palestinian journalists, international journalists, development workers, but also with the communities themselves, in Khan al-Ahmar, in Heshe refugee camp, and really like kind of showing people and debating with them the narratives, the images, what do they think cause harm or not? What do they think represents or misrepresents Palestinians? And I think it's really exciting to see, I think, some of the results of the research. And the outputs will be, I think the result will be these guidelines, these toolkits that we hope can be really used widely, online, offline, by any kind of people involved, in this world of engaging with Palestinians, whether diplomatically, internationally, or even locally. And so we're really excited to finish that.
Yeah, and just to tease some of our results a little bit, in our online survey, we found that 82% of Palestinians are dissatisfied with the way they are portrayed in the international news media. But satisfaction was also not very high when it came to local and international NGOs. So there is definitely a problem that is also perceived by Palestinian civil society. We also saw that there's a huge gap between the way that Palestinians perceive themselves. They used adjectives like brave, resilient, resistant, creative, and diverse to describe themselves. And when we asked them how they would describe the way they are seen and portrayed in the media, they used words like anti-Semitic, violent, and underdeveloped. So you see there's a huge gap, and we are really trying our best to make this gap a little bit smaller. We also see that there's still a lot of racist and anti-Palestinianness in the communication. Patterns of Orientalism still are very dominant, and we often have this dynamics between fighters and victims and nothing in between. And what this does is that it really doesn't allow international audiences to get to know Palestinians for who they are, what their objectives are, and in a more diverse way. So we are hoping that with the guideline that we are creating called Communicating Palestine, we can all share this process of learning together how to do a communication about Palestine that is inclusive and diverse and nuanced and does not do harm first and foremost. So this is our objective, and we hope that we could catch a little bit of fire in you for this project, and that you will stay up to date with us once we publish the guideline. And we also hope that you join the next session of the PDAF. PDAF will continue until the 1st of April, and there is another session after this one with a Q&A with Facebook. So super interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.